Let's watch a CNN panel as they discuss diversity and DEI in a way that I think is truly hard-hitting as they pull from personal examples while also citing data in a way that is straight to the point and undermines the racist undertones behind the battle against these kinds of acts of diversification.
The issue in this country right now is we live in different realities.
That's right.
I live in a reality where I know I do not have the same opportunity as you. I know I don't.
And you know
and
that
I know
too.
what, Scott?
And you know that.
Let me just tell you about me.
I'm gonna let you finish, but I want to answer this.
I'm not talking about how you feel. I'm talking about how I feel. Me, a black woman in this country.
But not in this city.
And I will run. And if you want
Look,
me
I'm a New Yorker, not in this city. You cannot say that. You can't say that in this city.
I'm not talking about New York. I'm talking about Ashley
let her finish.
right here. I got a law degree, a master's, and 2 bachelors. Probably more education than all of y'all added up together at this table,
Fine
right?
by me.
And I have always been the least paid person on payroll at every institution I have worked in. And it's not
Even
because...
in the White House?
Even in the White House.
Well, whose fault is that? I don't think you worked for George W. or Trump.
Well, guess what happened when I was there? DEI.
Okay. This dude. The fact that she's obviously trying to get like deep and give a personal recount of something that affected her and he responds by laughing and clapping like mocking her is so disrespectful. It's always straight white men who face the least bit of discrimination in this country who feel the need to have the loudest voice and downplaying everyone else's. My application is on average 10% less likely to get a callback than an application with all the same qualifications and education but from a white person. In the worst fields, that's as high as 24%. In the best fields, it's still 3%. Job segregation is the act of being placed in a lower level or lower paid job within an industry, despite having similar qualifications to your counterparts who are above you. Through this, the Department of Labor found that black women lost $42 billion in wages compared to white men in 2023. Even in executive positions, the racial pay gap still exists. It actually widens. It gets worse the higher up the ladder you go. So this idea of, well, if black people got promotions and worked better jobs, the pay gap would go away is also just a lie. They're just trying to put more, but this. Even with similar testing scores, black students are far less likely to receive the same scholarships. Almost 3/4 of all scholarships go to white students. I could go on, but I want to jump back into the panel and touch on a few other topics they talk on here. Just know I'm leaving out policing disparities, medical disparities, judicial disparities, political disparities. I mean, the list goes on here.
You're my friend. I respect you tremendously. I think you're probably the smartest operative in the Democratic Party, and they should listen to you more. That's number one. Number two, you and I share a comparable background. We're both from the Midwest. We both come from middle-class families, lower middle-class families maybe. I actually think we share a lot of similarities in our journey. But I think you made it, and you are the most respected voice often at every room or every table you're in, not because of anything other than your talent and your work ethic. And that's all anybody ever is asking for, is for people with talent and work ethic to make it. And that's what I see in you. That's how I see you.
But let me tell you something about my story and my family's story, is that we have faced discrimination. I have faced discrimination. I just said I was the least paid person, even in this moment sometimes, to my counterparts. It is just the reality of the country we live in. And I'm not saying, I do believe I'm qualified. I know I'm qualified.
That's exactly what we're saying here. But for every Ashley Allison who made it, there's 10 of her who got overlooked so Scott Jennings could sit on a panel like this. The difference here is that this is what white people, for some reason, like ego or whatever, cannot admit, is that white people are the only race in this country who has ever been allowed to skate by on mediocrity, specifically straight white men, because women aren't allowed to skate by on that either. That is why a lot of them are so worried right now about things like this. In the words of the great Jasmine Crockett, the only ones scared of DEI and diversity are the ones who don't know if they are truly qualified when everyone gets a fair shake. All the while, black people have had to do twice the work to get half the credit. We are underrepresented in every single institution. You think this just coincidentally happens? We're underrepresented in Congress, the courts, education, healthcare, STEM, management. If you go on, like property ownership, like CEOs, executive, like literally the list doesn't, business ownership, the list doesn't end. And Scott Jennings and MAGA would have you believe that that's not because white people have had their skin considered a merit or their skin color was enough to get them by, while black people have had to jump through endless hurdles, or that that they skirt by on mediocrity every single day in this country, or that there's actual structural disadvantages that hold qualified Black people back every single day in this country. But instead, they'll have you believe that Black people just aren't working hard enough, when in fact, we're working 3 times harder than you are to get half the results. And it's always, again, the straight white men who have this attitude, because they've never had to actually go through anything to even kind of understand what others might be going through.
Again, I'm a New Yorker, so I'm jaded. I am the Attorney General is a Black woman. The mayor's a Black man. The head of the Senate is a Black person.
Okay, New York is a small representation.
Well, small.
New
New
York
York
is
is not that small.
America.
Politics. Let me talk about
Every judge I
numbers.
appear before
Because
is either a woman or a person of
Ashley
color.
just gave an anecdote, but the numbers also show Black women are one of the most educated demographics in this country and one of the least paid. Why would that make any sense?
Why would that make any sense? And don't talk to me about the judges you stand before. Talk to me about the theory.
Hold on.
Talk to me about the world in which we live in and
Let's
the
look at
system
the
that
United
we live
States
in.
Supreme Court. How could you say we're not going to look at that from the top to the bottom? And I'm talking about the legal
New
system.
York is a more
that I live in.
progressive. And we
All
just
right,
got a Black woman.
Hold up. Let me.
We just got a Black woman on
Okay,
the
but you had a
board.
Black man from the 70s.
You brought up the Supreme
Or
Court.
the 60s.
One.
Did you know, Arthur, that there are many...
Hold on. What percentage of it does it represent the United States of America?
Why
So why does it matter?
Why
So we
is it
gotta
so
go by
hard?
Guys, one at a
Why
time.
is it-
But
why
guys,
is it so hard?
So we gotta
one at a
know
time.
acknowledge what she just said.
This is where we again need to stress that anecdotes do not matter. Data matters. If I go outside and think the world looks flat, that is not proof that the world is flat. If this guy goes outside and sees Black people in high-level jobs, that does not mean discrimination doesn't exist, especially when, as I showed, even in these high-level jobs, they are typically making far less money than a white man in that spot with the similar qualifications would. Also, notice how fast he skirts from the data here, Black women, most educated, lowest paid, because there is no logical response to this that doesn't clearly point to racial discrimination, structural disadvantages for Black people. In America, Black women are indeed one of the highest educated demographics, yet they are by far one of the lowest paid in all institutions. They have, and this is again, equal qualifications, equal experience. Even when being more experienced, studies have found that Black women are typically less paid than less educated white men. So they by far have the highest pay gap among equally qualified candidates. The only answer here can be racial bias. And I think that the fact that data show clearly can take us to points like this, that is so clearly against the racist, bigoted agenda that Republicans represent, is why MAGA has spent the last 8 years battling intellectualism so hard, trying to get the credibility of academia and studies questioned, that professors are just liberals and facts have a liberal bias and we can't trust anything. I don't know. We can't trust courts or universities. We can't trust anyone who didn't like grow up in Elon University and suck off Trump the moment they turned 18 or something. But it's because these facts are so uncomfortable to their feelings, which is just even more hilarious that 20 years ago, 15 years ago, however long, probably less than that. I'm thinking a little, maybe like 10 years ago, Ben Shapiro and the right coined that term that facts don't care about your feelings, largely because it was when transgenderism was first coming back into the mainstream conversation. And at the time, I don't think there was as many people who were well-versed to argue, hey, you don't know what you're talking about here. So they felt like, oh, we have science on our side with this. So facts don't care about your feelings. Haha, you see, what is it, the big clip of Ben saying that to like a trans woman on TV and she asked him to fight or something like that, right? It's hilarious how fast that has turned around back on MAGA and the people who coined this terms to where now facts literally don't care about their feelings and they cry about it so hard that they're like, well, all universities are biased and all professors are biased and all studies are biased. Like just 10 years ago, you were saying that all the facts were on your side and that all the more educated you are, you're conservatives. And like people expect us to forget this, or as if like we weren't around 10 years ago to hear it. Like I was 16 10 years ago and I remember that. So what are we doing, MAGA? What are we doing? You're humiliating yourself every single day on every single issue. You're 180ing and it's just completely embarrassing yourself and taking any credibility from anything you say going forward. But yet you think that like, by extension of Donald Trump winning, that you guys can just do that and still be taken serious when you're like all the way down here. Donald Trump doesn't even care about you. So why would we? And it's like Donald Trump's up here. So like, good job, I guess.